fool once or twice. The girl you think is flirting is just being really nice. It's cool, but it's like I've been getting confused, no clothes and no likes, but she follows me twice. Nice. Sometimes I gotta treat people like they're phone companies. I never believe what they say. Okay, you know when they tell you they have a deal, deep down it's not real, and yet you still pay. Come on, 5, 6, you gotta do it like this. 7, 8, I've been dancing since I was 6. Every kid on the block that's ticking its talk. I've been posting these gems, they've been giving you rocks.
And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. It is me, your boy Rico No Suave, and super happy to be back with each and every one of you guys. Hey, I love you. I missed you. That's what we do around here, everybody. We miss people just like you. I want to welcome you all for your support. Thank you, man. Thank you for your support. And if it's your first time, welcome. Thank you so much. And of course, if you're just watching it on TV, on your cell phone, or whatsoever, thank you for taking me with you at home, around shopping, or wherever you may be. But I'm super happy to be back with each and every one of you guys. And we have a fun-filled show for you today. So today, everybody, it's a sad day in acting history where there's a young lady by the name of Esther Blanche. And I want to, pay my condolences, especially with Lisa Rodriguez, for bringing her actually to the show. So I want to show you a couple of her photos. She actually passed away on July 19th. She was actually a guest on our show here on the Rico No Suave show. And I'm very sad to be able to hear about this because, the Rico No Suave show, which we're traveling to Hollywood, going back and forth, and we really wanted to actually see her. But unfortunately, they found her passed away in her house. And I found out this from her publicist, Lisa, and it was really sad. So, of course, I had to do my research, and there was so many people that was showing the love. So we're going to show another photo of her as well, too, of how beautiful she is as a person, and also for her and her unique way of TV, being on TV, of All My Children being in the soap operas as well, and how she actually affected a lot of people. So, I want to say, thank you so much for everything that you have done as far as in Hollywood, and also for, your bright smile and everything you have done as far as for the industry and TV and also in film. You will be missed. We will miss you. And she actually passed away on July 19th at the age of 51. So, Esther Blanche, thank you so much for everything you have done. The world, the industry will definitely miss you. And thank you so much for actually having your presence here on the Rico No Suave show. All right, everybody. So we have to talk about this beautiful young lady that's actually here. And when I tell you, she came on and was like delightful to actually be on the show, because today we are talking about women's boxing. I want you guys to put your hands together for none other than my girl, Malissa Smith. Let's go. Hey, Malissa,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm good, and you're catching Brooklyn fire trucks. Sorry.
How are you,
Oh,
Melissa?
God.
How's everything going?
Everything is great. Very, very, very great. I'm so
Thank you.
very happy to be on the show with you, Rico.
Yes, it's a pleasure to actually have you here on the show as far as with us today. There's so many great things to be able to talk about this. And, we got a full hour as far as with you here on the show with us today. Before we get started, do you have any shout outs you want to give out to anybody?
Well, I think as before the show I had just talked about, it's also kind of sad news. There's a young girl named Jesselyn Silva, as a 9, 10, 11-year-old. She really burst onto the women's boxing scene as an amateur, and to the point where she actually wrote a memoir at about the age of 10, 11, 12, My Corner of the Ring. Unfortunately, she then developed a brain cancer and passed away yesterday. So I just want to give a shout out to the Silva family, or what we call them, the Silva Familia, and to let them know that Jesselyn Silva in our hearts and always will be, and that we really pray for them and thank them for how gracious they are to all of us in our grief about their lovely daughter.
Yes, rest in peace. And condolences to the Silva family también as well. And yeah, it's it's the greats that we call them. When they actually pass, we hear the memories. There's memories that actually, that we have of them. But at the same time, too, whatever they've been going through, they're no longer in pain, but they're now in heaven looking over their family and also looking at us as we,
Yes.
speak
Yeah.
upon them. So that's yeah. Rest in peace to them both. Exactly.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Me too.
I
I'm
am ready.
ready. I'm
Yes,
ready,
let's go.
everybody.
No, don't want to be downing here, but we also have to appreciate and send out the love to everyone in our families.
Yes.
And we have a big family of life, and it's important.
Yes, it is. Well, Melissa, it's time to talk about you because I'm
Hmm.
super excited to be able to hear about your story, your journey. And I kind of talked a little bit about, being an author as well as a public speaker. We're going to speak about that. But for you, we have to know where it starts from ground zero, right? We know where it starts from ground zero. When we
Right,
talk about ground
right.
zero, we want to know when you were growing up, who did you watch, men or women or both, in boxing that inspired you?
Well, I grew up in the era of Muhammad Ali, so I mean,
Nice.
you start with greatness, right? I
Yes.
mean, I I guess when I first started to follow boxing, he was still Cassius Clay, as
Yeah.
and then became Muhammad Ali. And as I've talked about this and written about it a little bit, he was such an important figure, not only in terms of the boxing world, but as a cultural phenomenon in the late '60s and early '70s. And I was a teenager in those years, so his presence in the world, his stands, his political stands, his place as a boxer, and even in the years when he was unable to box because he had been convicted of resisting the draft, were of tremendous significance. So when he did come back into boxing and then had that remarkable trilogy with Joe Frazier, I just was all along for the ride, and would stay up in the middle of the night to watch like the Rumble in the Jungle and stuff
Yeah.
like that. It was the coolest thing. So definitely inspired me, not only in terms of my love of the sport and keeping me interested in the sport, but just the importance of a sports figure to kind of to to unite the world in a way,
Yeah.
and to become to really cross over into a much larger place of honor, if you will, and controversy, which I appreciated.
When it came to, when it came to you looking at from a boxing standpoint, at a young age, you know, my mom used to tell me, it was too violent, when they looked at the ring itself. But she loved Muhammad Ali on the outside, right? Of things that, he did as far as for the community, but also because of the way he talked, because of the way he kind of had that style as I know I'm the best, and but at the same time too, he would joke around and he would be involved as far as with different communities, right? He really affected a lot of the communities when growing up. Muhammad Ali is just one of them. Were there any other boxing or boxers that, or just form of boxing that you paid attention to while growing up?
Well, I have to say, I loved Kenny Norton. He was my favorite
Nice.
in terms of his style of boxing, and he had an overhand right that was just devastation. It was like a club, you know. He would beat somebody down into the ground, and yeah, of course he did break Muhammad Ali's jaw. So I would say, as a boxer, he was who he was. I was really his fan. I was a fan of Kenny Norton.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali was like, well, everybody loved Muhammad Ali, but I was
Right.
really glad when Kenny Norton won. I mean, sure, we all follow the heavyweights, but I, for me, boxing was always infused. Uh, it was to me a fascinating part of culture. I mean, I used to like to watch ABC Wild World of Sports. In those days, you could watch boxing matches in the afternoon on a Saturday, and you'd have Howard Cosell calling, little rinky-dink fights or Olympic fights, and those were really exciting. And I, unlike your mother, I really didn't find it violent. I found the science of boxing. I was really enthralled by the fact that two fighters at the top of their skills would then compete with each other in almost like a pas de deux. It was like dance to me. And there was something very magical about the sport. So I was always enthralled with it from the standpoint of its technical beauty. I mean, yes, it's violent, and yes, when you have fighters who are mismatched, you have can have terrible outcomes. And we look at Muhammad Ali's life and the fact that he boxed way too long and put himself in situations where he really did almost lose his life in the ring. That caused great trauma to him. For the latter half of his life, he struggled with terrible Parkinson's, the debilitating disease of Parkinson's due to his boxing activities. And that's really one of the downsides of the sport, especially when boxers are fighting 50, 60, 70 fights in their careers as professionals without it going 15 rounds. That's really brutal. I think both he and Joe Frazier said of their, I think it was their third fight, that they almost died. They almost died. That's how much they gave of themselves into the ring. To say they left it all on the mat is beyond what we can really comprehend, because they were never the same after that bout, neither of them. So it's boxing is also a testament to the spirit of the individual fighters, and that is something I have really come to appreciate and respect. The deeper I have gone into studying the sport, in terms of the athletes themselves, and as part of what drew me to women's boxing as a sport to really consider and write about, because here were women doing the same thing as Muhammad Ali and Kenny Norton and Joe Frazier and Sugar Ray Leonard or Sugar Ray Robinson before them.
Yeah.
But they were literally unsung. Nobody knew about them. Nobody cared about them. And I really felt that part of the story of boxing is ensuring that those memories, those activities, those efforts don't go unsung forever, that they need to be documented and they need to be told.
Now, because there's so many things to come about with unfolding with you and your milestones and your journey within women's boxing,
Sure.
we might as well get right into the gymnasium, the Gleason gym,
Yep.
right? So because
Yep.
that is key to this whole thing in regards to how you started your journey into
Yep.
understanding how women box, and basically you being them, right? So let's talk about when you first stepped into the gym. What was it like?
Yeah.
Where
Oh
was
gosh.
it? Let's go.
Yeah. All right. So, when I was I think I was 12 years old, I had an uncle who taught my brother and I the 1-2, and it was like how to turn a jab and how to follow it up with the right. So turn the jab with the left, follow it up with the right. And I spent like a lifetime so proud of myself that I could turn a jab. I mean, that's how crazy I was as a human being. So, but it didn't occur to me. I did not have the imagination. So that happened, 1966. I learned how to turn a jab.
Nice.
I lacked the imagination to understand that I could have been boxing all along. And one of my boxing heroes, Marion Trimier, known as Lady Tiger, she did start to box in like 1970, right? And she and I are the same age. And we even went to the same high school at the same time, Julia Richmond High School in Manhattan. She got it. She understood it. She boxed. She became a champion. She became a pioneer in the sport in the 70s and the 80s. Me, I lacked the imagination, didn't get it. Sometime in the 80s, when the boxercise became popular, I thought, oh, maybe that's something I can do. Life just didn't happen for me to be able to do that. But in 1997, I walked my fanny into Gleason's gym, which was down in Dumbo, Brooklyn, which at that time which right now is this very posh, rich place with $10 million penthouse apartments. But at that time, you took your life in your hands when you walked around there at night. And I walked into Gleason's gym. I had to go up a flight of stairs, cross into this cavernous room with windows on one side, and you just look out, you see rings, you see history. And took a deep breath, because it's like, oh my God, I've crossed the threshold of like one of the oldest boxing gym in America. Oh my God, how dare I? Right? All these feelings. And I go to the desk, and there's this guy sitting there. Turned out to be Bruce Silverglade, who's the owner of Gleason's. And I see him at this desk. It's fairly small. And then on the corner of the desk is a chessboard in mid-play. And I thought, wow. I'm home. I get it. This is more, boxing is more than just what I think it is. And I was, greeted with a lot of enthusiasm. And I said, listen, I want to box. I'm ready to do it. So he toured me around the gym. And then I began training with a guy named Johnny Greenwich, who was very, 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 very old school. Nice. He refused to use pads. Those who know boxing now, pads are all the big thing. He wouldn't even use them. And you do calisthenics with a cut-off broomstick. I mean, it was very, very old school.
Wow.
But I started to learn, to throw punches. First started on like a wall bag, then started using heavy bag, something called a slip rope, where you kind of go along a rope and you're slipping in and out, doing your punches, learning combinations, and then you spar on Saturdays, and to learn how, instead of pads, you sparred. And so I get the sense of like how to box. But for me, it was a very cathartic experience, because I realized pretty early on it wasn't about me competing. I didn't need to do that per se. It was really more an emotional journey in my own life. And I would hit the bag, and it was, tears would be streaming down my face. And I was like, what is going on? And then I realized, I had grown up in an era where women were never allowed to show their emotions, or never allowed to show power. If you hit the first time I hit somebody, I literally broke down into tears. It's like, oh, I hurt you. Right? So it's like, oh, okay, I get it. I've got to undo all this garbage of a lifetime.
Yeah.
So I can feel my own power. And I was really at war with myself, and it was a competition with all the things that I had to unlearn, all the scars I had to open up and bleed about so I could heal them. The traumas in my life, all those times in my life where I had to swallow my own power, or, I've been subject of sexual abuse, all sorts of things, the typical woman's story, nothing unique here. But what we don't get to do, certainly women in my generation, was, many of us are learning how to regain our power. And that's what I started to learn in the gym. And then out of that, I suddenly looked around me, and there were a lot of women at Gleason's gym, and in the late 90s and the early aughts. And I'm looking around, and there's women who are champions, women who are winning Golden Gloves fights, women who are winning, all the belts that were available to them at the time, because at that point, the sanctioning bodies like WBC and WBO, WBA were not sanctioning women's fights yet. That didn't start to happen until about 2005. So watching them learn, seeing their journey, seeing the things that were important to them really began to inspire me to overcome a lot of my own fears. So the boxing helped me kind of open up my own sense of power. And then beyond that, it began to teach me that I could start to really actualize the things that were important in my life. And writing was one of them. And it has something that I had always wanted to do and had done in spurts,
Yeah.
but never with a full sense of power. So those are the things that I started to gain out of the experience of being at Gleason's, which is not a typical story, but in the same sense, I think if you talk to women who do box, especially older women who have come to it having really spent good portions of their lifetimes not being able to actualize their own understanding of their own power, it's very powerful, very cathartic. And you come out of the other side of it a much clearer, stronger human.
Yeah. So, Melissa, I do have to congratulate you in regards to getting over the fear of hurting someone. Because when I'm thinking about this, and the reason why I think about this is because, as a woman, of course, women are beautiful, nurturing, but then at the same time too, will be able to stand up for themselves, to be able to say, hey, no, that's not the difference between right and wrong, right? And then when you get into a sport, sometimes coming from an era of that nurturing piece of a home, getting into a sport where that could be competition involved. Not saying you're going into competition, but know that you may be training yourself to be someone else. The one thing that you did bring out that is it happens a lot when it comes to trauma, or you might have things that's at home that may cause a little bit of trauma, but you go to the gym to relieve stress, some stress relief as well too. And to be able to know when you're ready to hit someone, you probably heard the saying before, I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover, and when it comes down to it, it's almost as if, hey, I don't want to hurt people, but I need to understand how the number one thing that you were doing is kind of self-defense in a way, right? Of learning how to box in a ring, but also how to be able to jab and how to be able to move and how to be able to, just in case if you ever get in a situation like that, you will be able to know how to, number one, kind of defend yourself. What was it like for you to know how to control your mindset, because that can be powerful? That can be used as a weapon where you know how to play chess against someone else. How did you control yourself during that time of your training, knowing that, hey, it's within the gym, this is competition, please try not to use it outside as much? How did that two come into play?
Well, I think that the main thing to understand is that it's not about anger.
Yeah.
You're learning a skill set when you box, and it's a constant repetitive movement. There's that saying about if you do something 10,000 times, you begin to understand what it is. So if you throw a jab 10,000 times, you kind of know what a jab is. And again, when you watch people in the gym or when you spar, you see who's in there to just put a hurt on some other person and who's in there to practice and learn the sport. And it's a big difference. Yeah. And I knew fairly quickly I was not there to put a hurt on anybody. I'm there to learn the sport. So it's not a question of controlling the power, or because sometimes you want to use your power and you agree with your person you're sparring with, hey, we're going to be at this with some power because we need to learn how to deal with that.
Right.
But you're not there getting angry and putting a beat down on someone. And that's a big difference. And I think understanding how to control one's own anger, because a lot of us carry it. It comes out and, whether overtly, having explosive and starting to scream and yell or throw things at people or be nasty to someone,
right?
Versus understanding where we are in space and why we're feeling the way we're feeling, and then exert your power in a way that defends oneself, one's perspective, one's point of view, where you can use that power to devastate somebody if you need to, but you don't usually need to. You're usually able to just, your presence alone is commanding enough for someone to say, oh, if I push further, this is going to cost me. And I don't know that I want to deal with the cost. Because
Yeah.
I'm always willing to I'll go the distance if that's what you need. And I've learned how to do that. And I've learned to be willing to put myself out there to do that. But, it's like when you walk down the street and your shoulders are squared and you feel
Yes.
confident, nobody's going to mess with you. They don't want to, they want to deal with the person who isn't going to fight back. And that's what you learn about bullies in life, right?
Yeah.
Bully only bullies so long as you allow them to bully. But if you have a mindset that says, hey, I'm in control of myself, I know who I am, I can hold my borders just fine, most times people just back right off. So that's that's kind of a gym thing, is you learn that kind of control. So as I said, it's not about anger, it's about learning one's own power, and then how to feel assertive and how to feel confident in oneself. And that's part of what that's all about, is learning confidence,
Yeah.
and this sense that you can do things.
Yeah, I like that. I like that piece. I mean, I like that because once you build confidence in regards to who you are and what you do, you become stronger that way. But you're a little bit more confident, but hopefully staying humble in regards to what
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
actually, part of whatever industry that you're in. But when it comes to this sport, of course, of boxing, because the reason why I bring this up, Melissa, is because certain people use that as a weapon. And when certain people use that as a weapon, thinking that they're powerful, sometimes it gets to their head. And the reason why I asked about the control of knowing how to control that within the ring versus outside the ring, when you're outside in the real world, sometimes people take it a little bit too far, right? And I'm kind of glad that you answered that, where you have to be able to know that, hey, it's only competition, and you have to know that your mindset has to be away from the ring, when you step outside the gym, right? Or wherever you may be going, right? Because I ain't gonna lie.
Absolutely. Look, we're not here to walk around the street and say, okay, I'm here. Come on. Come on. That's
Exactly.
not what we do, right? I mean, I'm happy I can do that. I tell this story. This was even before I was boxing. I was a friend of mine. I guess this had to be the 80s. New York City was still kind of funky in the 80s. I was with my friend. We're walking down the street. It was way later than we should have been out, but we were having a great night and we were just walking and talking. I see this group of guys walking toward us, and I just knew that they were going to, whatever it was, say something, be jerks. I just automatically went into a defensive posture.
Yeah.
This is long before I boxed. It was just like I was in a mindset, and I was in a physical defensive position. I had manipulated my keys into my hand, and the guys looked at us, and I looked at them, and I didn't stop the eye contact, had myself fairly erect, and they walked past. And then once we were halfway down the block with them, they started to mouth off. Ah, blah, 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 blah. We're like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Talk to the
Yeah.
man.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So it's now I have been attacked. I mean, that's the truth. So I know what it is on the other side when you literally have no power. I think I was 15. Yeah, 15, coming home from school, walking through Central Park. Yeah, just doing what 15-year-olds do. And the next thing I knew, I was literally off the ground. I had a sweatshirt over my head, and the guy was choking me, had me headlocked and attacked me. It was pretty brutal. So I know what that is. Like,
Yeah.
you have what power you have when somebody has you a foot off the ground and they're choking you to death.
Wow.
So you deal with it. You do what you need to do to survive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's that. But so I know both sides of that equation. luckily
That's
that hasn't
interesting.
happened in a long time.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that I know you're a strong young lady, and I don't want to be in the same ring with you. That's all I say. Because I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover. I'm a fighter. I'm
Well,
not.
you're a lover.
Hey, I'm
But
a
you know
lover.
what?
I'm a
We can
lover.
tag team. If somebody's coming at us, we got it, Rico.
Everybody, you already know it's my girl
We
Melissa
got it.
Smith. She is the women's boxing historian. She's a public speaker and author here. We're gonna take
Oh
a
God.
quick break, man. We're having a great time. When we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit about the comments that we're hearing about. We'll be back in 30 seconds. This is Melissa Smith. It's your boy Rico No Suave. Welcome to the show. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. It is none other than me, your boy Rico No Suave Soy Yo, and then the beautiful Melissa Smith. Melissa, are you having a great time?
I have. This is just great. I'm so happy that I'm doing this show with you, Rico.
Man, me
You have no
too.
idea.
Me too. Man, there's so much more to talk about. Hours, 1 hour is just not good enough. And that's just how it is. And of course I
Yeah,
gotta
we're
have you
good.
back
We're
on the
good.
show. But I do have to go to the comments because there are some good comments that's actually here. And I do want to give some big shout out. Of course, you know who Beatrice Davis. Sorry, I'm mixing you both up. Beatrice Davis is checking in. She says, Happy Hump Day. Hello, everyone. And she says you're a fantastic lady. That's what she said. You're a fantastic
Aw,
lady with a fantastic background. I like that. I like that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Beatrice. John T. for
you.
Free is checking in. He said, Woohoo! Welcome, Melissa. Welcome. Thank you guys so much. And then Marie Bird is checking in as well, too. She made a comment. She said, I was afraid of hurting people, and let me get this comment back. Sorry. I was afraid of hurting someone else and getting hurt while taking karate. It was such a problem that I ended up quitting karate. That's a good comment. I mean, it's a good comment because that's one of the reasons why I brought that up in regards to
Yeah.
what comes inside your mindset when you actually where you can become a weapon of self defense, but you can just become a weapon in general of people not really understanding how you're going to defend yourself when you're being attacked or if, you take an offense against something, right? So, thank you so much. John T. for Free says, how strange at the time when women are expected to not show strength, but also when men are supposed to show pain. So a man sparring with a woman also can express himself. Yeah, that's kind of, that's two different worlds there we're talking about. And I see where you're going with that, John T. for Free. See where you're going there. This is, and I think when we're talking about, the trauma piece and we're talking about how, we use that as a stress relief to be able to go out, to be able to learn a certain hobby or certain craft or a certain sport, some of the things we have to be careful about is how far we take it, meaning that in a positive and not turn it into a negative way, right? And I think that goes into kind of, our next segment as well. So thank you guys so much for actually tuning in and hopefully continue to show my girl Melissa Smith some love in the comments. Or if you want to kiss her at the TV, just go ahead and do it. Just kiss her at the TV. I love it. One of the things that I do want to talk about, because time do fly by fast when we're having fun, love, I would like to go back in time when women empowerment and women's equal rights to vote was a serious issue. Being a historian, did you ever think that would interfere with women's boxing?
Well, the women's suffrage movement is a long process. I mean, it actually, the women's movement actually came out of the temperance movement of the 1830s. And the same women that were involved in the temperance movement were also involved in anti-abolitionists in America. And from there went into the women's movement itself, which began in the 1850s. And it was a very slow process because, in the 1840s, women were discouraged from doing any kind of sports. Really, organized sports for women really only started to happen in the college, all women's colleges, starting in about the 1850s. So if you think that the right to vote didn't really happen until 1920 in the United States, and a similar period of time in the United Kingdom, which had a similar movement, it's quite a long arc from the first women's movement meetings, when the idea of becoming part of the political process began to germinate and also inform things like doing sports for women. By the 1880s, women were boxing in America. There were a series of, they would be on the variety theater stage doing boxing. Some of it was theatrical, some of it was real fighting. And to the point that in 1904 at the Olympics in St. Louis, which was also part of there was the St. Louis Exposition, and at that time, women actually put on a fight as an exhibition. So that's how well integrated it was into the culture at the turn of the century, as the momentum for the suffragettes was happening. Boxing, however, did not make its way as an official sport in the Olympics following this exhibition in 1904. For men, it did, and beginning in 1908, boxing became a mainstay of the Olympic Games every 4 years. For women, it didn't happen until 2012, 108 years later. But the idea of women participating in sports, things like field hockey, running, tennis, swimming, were starting to be available to them. But there were also backlashes that began to happen starting in around 1908, which did coincide with the rise of the suffragette movement. And as women there was a lot of talk of how it was, against womanhood to have, you can't be a real woman if you're doing sports. And there were implications of, sort of unnatural relationships between women who did do sports. So there was a lot of backlash, if you will, that coincided with the growth of the suffragette movement, and kind of started to abate a little bit at the time of World War I, which America became involved in 1917. But with many of the men away at war, women had to take on jobs in factories and other kinds of jobs that were typically more male-oriented. So there was a real shift in the culture of seeing women in more what were called men's work. And that coincided again with the suffragette movement that was finally ratified in 1920. So there is an interrelationship between the women's movement, women's empowerment, and sports. Boxing is kind of like a little bit of a comma at the end of that, because boxing has skirted what it has and has not been acceptable for decades in America, certainly, well, since the 1880s to now. And that is because of where it has stood in terms of popular culture. In the 1880s, you may have had people accepting it, but you also had ministers railing against, the downfall of society because women were boxing. So it has a very difficult place on the gender binary, if you will. What is male, what is female, and when you think about boxing, we think of boxing as a male sport. We don't think of it as something that women should ever do. and
True.
yet they have always boxed. So it becomes a bit of a problem for popular culture.
Yeah, um, and I think that's always thought because since it is kind of a we kind of talked about this, behind the scenes as well too when we're talking about boxing and how much damage that can actually put on a person if they're boxing for quite some time. And when we're looking at women's boxing, the power is still there. No, you mean from a women's standpoint, and also from a men's standpoint, and how that was looked at, during the time when women was getting involved in voting, when it was during that time of where are the equal pieces, or what can a woman actually do in sports in order to get to that level. We kind of see it with the WNBA in some cases, right? With sports, where does you have a male dominant sport for the NBA because most people are seeing it, the popularity behind it. But then now you can see it with Caitlin Clark and Angela Reese, where all they had to do was just meet the media, and the media now everyone wants to go and see them. But as behind the scenes, there was always that good competition, behind the scenes of, other sports as well. The one thing that I do feel where you're coming from, where there's always kind of been a shift, or in for communities where you always had that star fighter, right? You had that star person that was there in the
Right.
community and people knew about that person, but that person really didn't get over that threshold because it wasn't supposed to actually happen because of the popularity that's happened between men and actually women. So I think it was an interference in regards to that, because the women wasn't supposed to be seen as as on a level as far as where men, but they were capable of doing that within their own community, right, or within their own industry. Did that bother you as a journalist, or as a person that wrote as far as with some of these great women that was in competition as far as with boxing?
Well, to me, it's just I, I'm interested in teasing out why.
Right.
What motivates uh, acceptance versus non-acceptance at any particular time. And it's not just about boxing. There's always larger forces. Why was boxing suddenly something that even middle class women could do in the 1880s and 1890s? What motivated that? And if you step back and you look at the larger forces of kind of the decline of the Victorian era in the United Kingdom and what that meant, um, and sort of a shift in thinking about what women can and can't do in society. If you look at
Yeah.
clothing in the 1880s, and you see pictures of women, they have these enormous, like their clothing is enormous, have these big bustles behind their behinds, and the crinoline and 7,000 layers, and they're wearing corsets, and it's terribly uncomfortable. It's kind of hard to do sports when you're in that kind of a dress. Then comes the bicycle in the 1890s. And the bicycle, to me, is probably the most revolutionary invention for women that ever happened, and was certainly not what anyone thought of. But when the bicycle came along, and especially when the safety bicycle came along, which allowed basically created something with a gearbox so your clothing wouldn't get tangled in it. This suddenly gave women freedom to just be on a bicycle and go. They weren't in carriages. They weren't dependent upon men to give transportation. They didn't have to get on a bus or on a trolley car or on horse-drawn trolleys.
Hmm.
They could just get on a bicycle and go. And if you look at the difference in clothing in the late 1880s and the late 1890s, you suddenly see a very slim silhouette. The skirts are long, but they're very slim. It's mostly a blouse and a skirt. You have women entering the workforce um, wearing these kinds of suits. There's even a movie called The Gibson Girls with Judy Garland from like the 1940s, early 1950s that kind of looks into this. But it's a very fascinating thing. And at the root of it is women on bicycles. Now, why do they wear these clothing? Because you can't ride a bicycle in a big, huge dress with 10,000 layers. So if you simplify it and you just have a long skirt and a blouse, and you're able to like put clips on your clothing, on your ankle, clip your dress to your ankles so that you can ride your bicycle freely and it's not going to get caught in the gear, you suddenly have power. You have this woman enormous opportunity, freedom. This helps inform what the suffragettes are all about. And when you look at photographs of the women who were suffragettes, that's how they're dressed.
Yeah.
They're dressed in a simple black long skirt. They ride bicycles. Revolutionary. Absolutely revolutionary.
Man, Melissa, you know, I appreciate you telling me this and telling the audience this, because this is something I didn't know about, of course, and you know, I'm loving hearing this from a woman's point of view as well. So, you know, another sport, you know, that we're going to be talking about, because we got to take another break right now, is NASCAR. Sports that I know there's women getting into racing as well too. So hey, I want you to hold on to your seats. Everybody, this is Malissa Smith. She is the women's boxing historian, public speaker, and author. I'm so here for her, and she's here for us as well too, to educate us. All right, give me like 30 seconds. I'll be right back, okay? It's NASCAR moments, everybody. It is NASCAR moments. Everybody, hey, you know, I want to make sure that we actually go with that NASCAR. We're gonna put up that poster of NASCAR, you know, so people can actually see the actual so they can see what NASCAR moments is all about. So, you know, NASCAR moments with me and the media. I love it, man. It's all about that vroom, vroom. That's what we do around here. All right, everybody. So, you know, over the weekend in Richmond, there was a winner. And his name, number 3, Austin Dillon. Yes, you can see. Love this. Photo credit to Getty Images on this. These guys took some very great photos. Big shout out to them for this one. But you can see number 3 coming in. You know, Austin Dillon, hey, you won. But there was always a controversial piece of this. But I have to say congratulations in regards to this win. You know, you came in first. Look, it was a cookout, man. It was a cookout, 400 there in Richmond. And I have to say you deserved as far as this one, but it was, I don't know, man. I might want to call this luck, but it was awesome for you to be able to win this one as well too. And I have to say the kid was happy too, because the Papa won. The Papa won. What went crazy about this is that there was a spinoff. There was a spinoff on this, and I have to say that there was kind of like a bumper car type deal that actually happened for the second and third place. And man, I tell you, there's anything that could possibly happen in a moment of NASCAR in order for you to think who's going to come in first place, and you think the person's going to come in first place, and it wind up not happening. But in this case, we got my man Austin Dillon. Congratulations, number 3. In regards to that. And this, of course, everybody, this is NASCAR moments. Yes, NASCAR moments. All right, let's get back to my girl, Malissa Smith. Melissa, are you still with us?
I'm here. I'm happy.
Me too. I'm happy too. That's actually another sport that women are actually getting into a lot, that I didn't realize there was another side of this, where there is women that's actually racing, you know, just racing in general as far as for cars. And I'm like, wow, and competitions. And that is super, super,
yeah,
super
the Indy 500 had a woman driver in the top 20. I mean, she was awesome. Absolutely awesome.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Hey, we're down to our last few minutes of the show. I told you, the show is going to go by fast when we're having fun. We're having a great time. But thank you so much as far as taking us back as far as into the history of boxing. But we got to talk about two special things, of course, that comes while you're being that kind of that journalist and a historian, but there's also you talking in front of an audience and also you as an author. Let's talk about your two books first, because I want to show that on the screen. There's two books that you actually have, and we'll put up that first book. Let's put up that first book. So the first one, a history of women's boxing, of course, by you. And then there's the second one that we actually have there, which is the second book, which is The Promise of Women's Boxing, a momentous of a new era for the sweet science. Ooh-wee! So let's talk about, a brief synopsis of those two books. Talk to us.
Sure. So A History of Women's Boxing was my first book, and it looks essentially at 300 years of the sport, if you can believe that. Boxing started as we know it in the 1720s in the United Kingdom, in London, by a man named James Figg. He set up like a little amphitheater because they were very, very fascinated with the Greeks and the Romans at the time. And they kind of used to have what they call prize fighting with short swords called cudgels, which were basically made out of wood. And you would, knock the crap out of each other with your swords. And you held 20 guineas in your hand, and the first person who dropped it lost the bout. Gradually, that kind of got boring, so they started to hit each other, hold the sword in one hand, hit each other with the other hand, and then they dropped the swords and just started to use two fists. Women were boxing then in the 1720s, and we know this because at the time, kind of similar to now, fighters would call each other out. Then they would put an advertisement in the newspaper and say, hey, I think you're a jerk. I'm going to beat you up, or whatever it was. And you have women doing the same thing. Hannah Hayfield, the ass driver from Spoke Wellington, whatever it is. So it was really kind of awesome. So then you see women boxing, and then they kind of disappear from the newspaper, and then they start boxing again. So I trace this arc over 300 years from 1720s in the United Kingdom until the first Olympics where women actually competed, which was at the 2012 London Games. There were 36 women who boxed. The first gold medal for an American woman at the Olympic Games was won by Clarissa Shields from Flint,
Nice.
Michigan. She won a gold. She then repeated in 2016, the only American boxer, male or female, to ever double gold. So,
Wow.
so the first book kind of ends with that. The second book, The Promise of Women's Boxing, a momentous new era for the sweet science, picks up the story kind of the day after the Olympics and goes, okay, now what? We won the Olympics. What's going on? What's happening? Are we suddenly, on TV all the time? Are we getting $10 million to fight? No, nothing happened. So I look at the last 13 years in the sport, and there really has been momentous change. We've had two women box at Madison Square Garden in the house of Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, and had, the fight of the year in 2022. Irish fighter Katie Taylor and the Puerto Rican fighter by way of Bushwick, Brooklyn, Amanda Serrano. They fought for $1 million. They headlined the main event at Madison Square Garden, and they sold out the garden. So extraordinary fight, had 1.5 million viewers. A few months later, and in the United Kingdom, Clarissa Shields had a fight for undisputed, and I should say this was for undisputed lightweight. Clarissa Shields had a fight for undisputed middleweight against a woman named Savannah Marshall, who's the only woman who had ever defeated her back in her amateur days. They headed up a card of 11 fights, all women, sold out the O2 Arena in London. That's the equivalent of the Madison Square Garden. Got over 2 million views on Sky Sports around the world, and ESPN in the United States. So really, really exciting stuff. So there are these highs and lows. Right now we're in a bit of a lull, but there are just the level of sportsmanship and skill is just through the roof. Really exceptional fighting. And because I also trace out the history of amateur sports in America, and really, believe it or not, amateur boxing for women wasn't legalized until the mid-1990s. So we really have come a very long way in a very short time to have such exceptional amateur fighters that are able to compete on the international level. But there are also extraordinary women boxing in places like Argentina, Mexico, Japan. We've got African fighters, we've got fighters from every continent that are really doing extraordinary work, both on the amateur side and in the professional side. And this latest book, Promise of Women's Boxing, I really delved into that. And I also had the honor of Clarissa Shields, who wrote the foreword for the book, which, as I said, really honored me to have her perspective talk about what this has meant for her to sort of be that trailblazer as an Olympian and then a trailblazer in the professional world, because she was undisputed. She's now been undisputed in 3 weight classes and has won championships in 4. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Oh man, I am super happy. I'm just super happy to be here listening to you because there's more of this. And you know, I have to have you back on the show next year. I definitely have to have you back because we need to take a little bit more deep dive into this because of the awareness of where it has come from and where we're at today. But also we need to go a little bit on the ins and outs of, you know, the different styles of the boxers, because certain boxers have different styles. It's not cookie cutter, right?
Absolutely.
And I love that you kind of spoke a little bit about the international piece, where it's kind of a diverse background of, you know, of different countries. So I definitely want to talk more about that when you do come back on the show. But you know what I do want to talk about right now? It's called gifts. Gifts. That's what it's called. The Rico No Suave show is going to present you this shirt, right?
Oh,
yes, because
so sweet. Thank you.
because you deserve this. You deserve this shirt because going back in history, going back in time, and also for you and your passion in regards to boxing in general, at the very beginning of who inspired you, you actually taking yourself and putting yourself in a gym for fitness, but also to be able to know how this is done with being a boxer in general, from a woman's standpoint. And then, of course, you being a public speaker and you being able to talk to people and being an author. This shirt right here means a lot for us to be able to give this to you, you know, because you are definitely a gem of the world. And welcome to the family. Welcome to the family.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Welcome to the family, love. So before we get out of here, of course, love, we're going to put up your social media because your social media is very important for us to be able to tell the whole world about. So let's put up her first social media here. All right. So the first one is, yes, LinkedIn, everybody. LinkedIn. Make sure you go and put that dash in between Malissa and Smith, right? That hyphen there. Make sure you put that there so you can be able to find her. Make sure you go on there because it's all about business, everybody. It's all about business, and find more information about her. Here's the next one. All right. Yes. At Girl Boxing Now. That's Instagram, everybody. Instagram. So, yes, Instagram is very important. So, make sure you go there. She does have a link in her bio there. So, make sure you go ahead and check out everything as far as on her link tree as well. Here's the next one. Oh, yeah. Formerly known as Twitter. It's X. Right? X at Girl Boxing Now. Please go ahead and follow her there and find out every content that she's putting out there. And, you know, she might be putting quotes out there as well, too. You never know, everybody, from women boxing. Let's go. All right. Then we got some websites. Yeah, we got some websites. Yeah, melissa-smith.com. So please make sure you go to her website. You'll find out everything more about her. On your website there, is the books, are they available for purchase?
Yeah, the books are there. You can click on links to purchase the books. That'll send you basically to Amazon. That's where they're available online, you know, anywhere you buy online books, but Amazon is great.
Perfect. Last but not least, we got one more website, and you already know, it's girlboxingnow.org. Oh, yeah, it's an organization, baby. Organization. That's what we say. Yes. So make sure you go ahead and follow her there. Melissa, it's been a pleasure having you on the show with us today. I hope you had a great time.
Thank you. Great time. Thanks.
Awesome. Everybody put your hands together for none other than my girl, Melissa Smith. Yeah. All right, everybody, we got to get out of here. Yes, we got to get out of here. So it's your boy, Rico No Suave. So one thing about what we're saying about women's boxing, everyone, is it just takes time for you to be able to know that if this is your hobby, this is what you love to do, you go for it. And this is exactly what we did as far as with the historian today in women's boxing with Melissa Smith. We're going to put up our social media now, everybody. We have our social media, so we're going to put up our website first. So our website is www.riconosuaveshow.com. Make sure you please go there and follow us there. We're always updating our website, so stay on top of our information there. Our next one is this. Yes, it is Instagram. Yes, Instagram, Rico No Suave Show. Please go ahead and check us out on Instagram. Follow us there. And just continue to follow us. Here's our next one. Our next one is, boom, yes, Rico No Suave Show on Facebook. Like and love everything we do and follow us there, too. The next one is important, like always. It is where you guys should be subscribing to. Rico No Suave Show. Yeah, Rico No Suave Show. Please make sure you go and check us out there on the Rico No Suave Show on YouTube. Last but not least, Mixcloud. Yes, Mixcloud, everyone. Mixcloud is where it turns into a podcast, turns into audio. And yes, I want you guys to make sure you please go ahead and follow us there. Everybody, we got to get out of here. We want to thank you guys so much for showing some love here on the Rico No Suave Show. And we're always here giving you some great guests for you guys to love. All right, everybody, until next time, as we end off the show, just like this, darling.